Welcome to the Mythicist Milwaukee Show podcast. Before we get started, we'd like to extend special thanks to all the sponsors of the Myth Information Conference 3 coming up on October 21st at historic Turner Hall in Milwaukee. Freedom from Religion Foundation, the Sophia Wolf Quadracci Memorial Fund for Stem Cell Research, author of the new book Mythos Christos, Edwin Herbert, Atheist Alliance of America, Atheist Republic, Godless Engineer, Kenosha Racine Atheists and Free Thinkers, and the Atheist Community of Milwaukee. Your $300 sponsorship includes a table at the conference, 1 ticket to the event, and 1 ticket to the VIP party, as well as a mention on all of our various social media platforms, including this fine podcast. Buy your tickets and sponsorships at mythicistmilwaukee.com. All of us here at Mythicist Milwaukee would like to thank all of our patrons for supporting this show. And now here's your hosts, Rob Moore and Brian Edward. Thanks for joining us for another episode of the Mythicist Milwaukee Show. I'm Rob Moore, the Deacon of Doubt in these parts and the Secularinx here in the Milwaukee area. Joining me again after a week off is co-host Brian Edward, the Friar of Freethought himself. What's going on today, Brian?
Excited to talk to John Loftus. Definitely like his style and choice of hats that I've seen him wear on the video.
Yeah, he's at home in a pile of tin cans, apparently, kicking stuff around. Calling us from the great state, the state that keeps the South in the North, Indiana. What's going on, John? Thanks for joining us.
Well, I'm not exactly happy with what Indiana is doing either, but then that's where I'm at.
Nobody is, I think, except for the Republicans in Indiana. But
right,
John Loftus, author and an author of some note. This is interesting stuff he's come out with. He's actually the editor of a compilation. It's a pretty thick tome. I was looking at it, and it's the kind of thing that we like around here because it kind of nutshells the arguments against religion. It's called The Christian Delusion, Why Faith Fails. Forward by our buddy Dan Barker. Tell us about the book, John.
Well, it was edited a while back. It's my first anthology, and it follows along the same title lines as Richard Dawkins' book, The God Delusion. And I wanted to make it something specific to specific faith, Christianity in particular. You know, I'm trying to bring those arguments to a sect within religion itself.
Okay, so this is an anthology. I lost track of your book number count, maybe around 10. And I understand like the first is a little bit more nicer approach, and as we go to your latest book, it's a little more directed. And where does this fall in? Does this anthology, is that ever 3 or 4 or 5, somewhere in the middle?
Well, okay, I guess when I was talking to Seth on the Thinking Atheist program, I failed to make a distinction between my own books, the ones that I've authored myself, and my anthologies. My anthologies are pretty much the same tone, I suppose, throughout, because we are scholars, and we want to make sure that the scholarly arguments get read by Christians, the average Christian in the pew, or the intelligent Christian in the pew, the educated pastor of sorts. So not to discourage them too much from reading what we have to say, except for perhaps a title or two. We're treating the faith respectfully for the most part throughout my anthologies. My books, however, are a different story, and as I was looking at them, I'm getting more and more jaded.
I remember you using that word.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, the last title, Unapologetic.
Yeah.
Why the philosophy of religion must end.
Yeah, I'm working on it now. I'm still trying to figure out what to say.
What do you mean by philosophy of religion?
Well, the kind of philosophy of religion that is practiced most often, the thing that I am arguing against, is the kind of philosophy that is parochial. That is, it's practiced in a particular region of the world, like in America, and it's evangelical because evangelicals seem to have dominated the field. And so I'm arguing that to focus on, evangelical philosophy of religion is just really bad philosophy of religion, and that should end. Eastern countries, you'll have, Eastern philosophy of religion being discussed to the exclusion of Occidental philosophy in the West. So there's a lot of different kinds of things about the parochialness of the philosophy of religion that need to be brought out. There's continental tradition in European countries, and there's the analytic tradition in American countries. And I argue that all faith claims should be treated equally, and they're not doing that in the philosophy of religion. I also argue that when it comes to arguing all faith, treating all faith claims equally, they should also treat the dead religions of the past. And the very fact that they're not doing that is also an indictment on the philosophy of religion, because it's time sensitive. I mean, there's really no reason why they should exclude the dead religions of the past, simply by virtue of the fact that no one is a practitioner anymore, or very few people. I mean, what is there about a dead religion that makes it not a true one? I mean, I want to know what kind of principle that might be that would lead people to think that. So the philosophy of religion is not being done correctly, and that it should end. It should end. Yeah.
Okay, so are you worried more about them, excluding people? Are you just absolutely saying we're right, and then that's why you can constantly hold these beliefs?
The book's a work in progress, even though I've got just a couple weeks to finish it. I'm trying to finish it this week, actually.
I've known for my plagiarism, so I'm trying to get in there.
So, I think one of the things is that, and I'm working on this section now of the book, it's, we should not grant anything. And what I mean by that is many times philosophers will grant something for the sake of arguments. Well, take for instance, the belief in hell, eternal suffering in hell, however conceived. Well, then philosophers will look at that and they'll try to make it either palatable or barbaric, and what they're doing is they're taking for granted some ancient superstitious writings that were first penned in the intertestamental period between the Old Testament and the New Testament, and claiming that, okay, let's take for granted that the New Testament's interpretation of those intertestamental writings are correct, and let's just see if we can make that view of hell palatable or not. So they argue back and forth, and they say, well, that hell is just barbaric, and other times they'll say, well, hell can be made palatable because of this, that, and the other. And what they miss is the evidence. What is the evidence for hell? Whether I don't care how far you dig down the earth, you don't find it. And that might be naive and simplistic to say that. But even the text of the Bible itself. I mean, why should we take the intertestamental period as authoritative? I mean, that's all it. Why should we grant the existence, the concept of the existence of hell as having any meaning whatsoever? Mm-hmm. Why should we even be dealing with that when it's clear as day that this concept of hell came out of the barbaric, superstitious past? There's no need to discuss whether or not this concept can be made palatable or not, given its origins. And that's basically what I'm about to write today.
And by the palatable version of hell, you mean hell really is just a place without God. You're lonely. The door's locked from the inside.
It's sort of that Jewish version, kind of just further away from God.
Yeah, exactly. I think C.S. Lewis made that argument. I don't know if he was the first or not, but yeah, it's locked on the inside. You can argue against that. You can say something like that. Well, if we really do prefer hell, for instance, we can argue. This is the philosophy of religion now. If we really do prefer hell, then there's no punishment. Right. I mean, it's a place of pleasure. It's a place we enjoy. We want to be there. And so if that's the case, then let's all go.
Especially if all my buddies are there.
Yeah, I mean, either it's a place of punishment or not. Either it hurts or it doesn't. Either it's, or it's not. And there's no. It's almost bizarre to the point of being insane to think the doors are locked from the inside. Now that's doing the philosophy of religion. What I just did was take for granted there is such a thing as a hell, and we're just trying to understand what it means. Whereas what I'm going to be arguing for in this book on apologetic is that there's no reason to take that seriously, given that it originated in the pre-scientific superstitious past. And how do you determine they're pre-scientific? Well, that's easy. I won't even bother mentioning that. And how do you determine whether or not it's superstitious? Well, look at the other kinds of beliefs those people believed that were crazy. And I'll give you one example. You find that in the Bible in some passages. There's something called the evil eye. Now, the evil eye, according to them, according to some people in the ancient world, was an eye that if it landed on you could infect you with lust or selfishness or pride or all kinds of other of the sins that they dislike. So you never wanted to look at anybody you never wanted to look into the eyes of anyone you thought might have the evil eye. Now, we know this is bizarre. I mean, we argue against it all you want. It's just bizarre. So, and things like how, what the universe looks like, and it's obvious that the universe in their minds was a flat disk with a dome above, and God opened the doors of heaven and let the rain fall. I mean, these are just bizarre, and they've been proven false by science. So, given that, then there's no reason to take what people in the intertestamental period said about hell. That's it.
So when you were preaching, I think from 1987 to 1990, if I saw the website correctly, in Angola, Indiana, which did you choose? Did you get the barbaric or this palliative version of hell, and did this help lead to your cognitive dissonance?
Well, that's a good question. I have to go back in time and erase some of my, or actually rejuvenate some of my brain cells to be able to access that information. And I think the beer has killed some of those over the years. But, I did accept a more palatable thing. I did unthinkingly accept C.S. Lewis's idea that the hell was locked, the doors were locked on the inside. And I didn't accept there was a time I accepted fire and brimstone for eternal damnation, and conscious suffering. There was a time I did accept that. And I don't know when I quit accepting that. Probably right about, 88, 89, 90, 91, 92, 93. I'm just throwing some years out there just for, because I can. But but sometime along that trajectory, I did accept this idea that hell was just the absence of God, and the doors were locked from the inside. And I didn't think about it. I mean, it's almost like, faith deadens your mind. I mean, it's what it does. And you'll take any explanation.
As long as it's congruent.
Yeah, as long as it's consistent with the idea that, you have faith, and faith is good.
Go ahead and take us through the rest of your way out of the religious morass.
I wrote a book about that. I call it my magnum opus. It's called Why I Became an Atheist. And maybe I could sell some books by just saying, go there.
There you go. Why he became an atheist. It seems obvious to a lot of us, and I wonder... obviously, it happens. You came out of it, and some people do change their minds. But who are you? Who's the target here? And doesn't it frustrate you that people who believe are just going to believe, no matter what sort of logic you throw at them?
That is true. Some people are going to believe no matter what you throw at them. I mean, a close friend of mine said that she prefers faith over knowledge. That she prefers if I'm ignorant, then I prefer my ignorance, and that's the end of the story for her. Yeah, it kind of frustrates me, but then I do think that faith can be a placebo, and as a placebo, if you have faith in something like a sugar pill, there's certain kinds of things that can take place in your body because you think they can happen, like you can overcome fear. I think Darren Brown in his videos has shown that. So there's certain benefits to that placebo of faith, but it is a placebo, and it won't cure what really ails you, and that's bad thinking.
Right. And there's other ways to get there too. To me, becoming an atheist is really what gave me to overcome fear. I could go down to the basement in the pitch black and curse the devil and not have to worry about anything. I mean, really. I mean, that until I was fully atheist, I'd always fear that.
Well, that's
good. So, John, you're one of these guys who feels obviously that we should take the taboo away from ridiculing religion or exposing it, as it were, going ahead and talking about it. It seems that there's a division in the atheist movement, as there often is, between those who are kind of have more of a live and let live, and let's not tear down religion, and it's okay for people to believe.
The way I solve that is, I write, and people who want to read what I write, then good. There it is. Here it is. Buy my books, go to my blog, Facebook page, Twitter account, whatever. And you'll find me arguing a lot of the times against faith, in those different venues. Read them if you want. And yes, I'm there to persuade you to abandon your faith. Yes, I am. And on occasions, very rare occasions, I'll ridicule. I think that's a valid tool to disabuse people of faith. Not any one individual, but if you can get more and more people, it's like coming out. Ridiculing is like more and more atheists coming out. And there's strength in numbers and there's strength in ridicule because nobody likes to have their faith ridiculed. So I'll do that once in a while.
What would you say your end game is? Like if religions were watered down or to the point, or if most religious believers believed in separation of church and state in a full way, would you still be doing it? Would that be good enough, or do you really want to just push it all the way to atheism?
I don't know. That's a good question. I mean, I don't really have to answer that question. I mean, I'll try. I'm just writing what I know. And that's the bottom line. I've done a lot of study, and I don't want that study to go to waste. And so I'm writing what I know. Where it leads people, individuals, communities, states, governments.
That's awesome.
Not that that's going to go way all the way up there, but where it leads people to go, that's not my problem in a way. But I do think that an atheist society, an atheist country, an atheist world would be better off. I mean, we can look at some examples of that in Scandinavia and Denmark and Norway, I think so. But I want to get back to the question. So on the one hand, I argue people out of their faith online, but on a personal level, I don't talk to people about their faith. I don't initiate probably any conversation about faith or religion or Christianity with people I know or that I meet or my family. Now it does come up from time to time, and when it does, and I'll answer questions. I don't think I've ever been deliberately obnoxious to any of these people because the bottom line is I don't care what they believe. Now that sounds like inconsistent. You were talking about live and let live, or trying to argue people out of faith. I do online, I do in public, I do in this podcast. I mean, I can, but when it comes to my personal day-to-day activities, I don't bother because 9 times out of 10, you're not really going to talk them out of faith. I know that there's that one person probably you can help cause doubt through that street epistemology, which I endorse of Bach-Hosian's. But I need some personal space. I need some. I can't argue 24 hours a day. My every waking hour. And I don't really think that by talking one person out of their faith, if I could do that, it's going to change the world. It changes the world a little bit. Okay, I grant it. But it won't change the world any more than my writing does.
Right.
So I let them go their own way. I live and let live.
The books are probably more effective than, just grabbing somebody at the Moose Lodge.
Yeah. I mean, I've tried that, thrown them upside down, kicked them around. It didn't work.
Besides your books, what is going to change the world?
Sitcoms.
Sweet.
I think the issue of homosexuality is changing the world because the younger generation is embracing the homosexual lifestyle and embracing homosexual marriages. I think that, of course, the courts have embraced those. I think this is an anniversary of some kind today about that. But I think that is going to cause more and more Christians and believers across the world to reevaluate their religion as it was born in an era that denied that, or at least largely did.
Yeah, that's what I call taking a bite out of religion. And taking a concept and getting it out. I think there's value to that. Would you agree?
Oh yeah. And the homosexual movement has done the atheist movement quite a favor, even though a lot of homosexuals still believe. Yeah.
Yeah, I have to agree with that. Do you see the atheist movement as the next civil rights movement? Is it the next, and is there one beyond that, or is it really the last one?
Yeah, that's to be seen. I know that there's the rise of a lot of different minority positions, and I don't see why they don't have validity as well either. I'm embracing that. Anything that is different than the majority being, at least in our country, in America, in the Western world, any minority movement that disagrees or challenges the majority, the Christian majority, is a good thing in my opinion. And of course, in other parts of the world, it would be any minority viewpoint that challenges the dominant religion of their era too. Area.
Certainly, the Catholics are the most diverse. I think they're more than half were in support of gay marriage.
Catholics always had that interesting dichotomy where they seemed really archaic in some ways, and yet they were also very progressive in as a young Protestant growing up. I noticed that like it was okay for the Catholic priest to show up and have a drink, down at the banquet hall with the people, and even a cigarette outside. But yet there was all this no women in the priesthood, which was bizarre to me. I grew up in New England with a female pastor somewhere in every town. So the Catholic Church to me always was a little bit paradoxical in its nature, kind of accepting of evolution. But
what's your opinion, John, on the Catholics and how it's morphed?
I agree. Yeah, I definitely agree. There's something about Catholicism that it's probably it has a wider global reach than other Christianities, and as it does, then you'll find different theologies in different countries, more so. And their biblical scholars are different. Their biblical scholars are on the liberal side. I think the idea that all you have to do is, believe in the Pope and a few of the other doctrines that they demand, you can just do and think what you will. So these biblical scholars, they don't need the Bible to believe. They believe that the church created the Bible. So it's the church that largely has authority over what they are to believe in. So that what they can do, they can be more honest, I think, about the Bible and say, well, this is crap. It's a strange thing. I don't quite understand it myself. Yeah, the Catholics are a different breed of Christian for sure. But you'll find them stretching anywhere from like quite the fundamentalist people to quite the liberal people.
Yeah, certainly. And did you try to crack the fundamentalist egg at all? I listened to a little bit of your last sermon, and it kind of was talking a bit about maybe the atheist that was in the pew listening to that. Is that what you were going for?
I was, of course, that was the last sermon I preached, and I was in the throes of doubt myself. I probably would have been described as a deist, at the time, and a deist in the pulpit of a conservative church, but they liked me, and they put me up there on Layman's Sunday in the same town where I used to be the president of the Ministerial Association, because I got involved in this church, and it was one of the biggest. It is the biggest church in that area, and pastor liked me, and I taught some Sunday school classes and preached and stuff like that. Well, that was the last sermon, and I was reaching out to people who might have been certainly people who were sitting in the pews and they were hurting because of something, or because they were doubting or something, sort of like me. I preached, it was about Moses, and the title of the sermon was Moses, the Reluctant Disciple, I think it was, or servant. Yeah. So I kind of viewed myself as that, and whether or not I could get back in the ring, as you will, when I have such doubts, I was actually dealing with my own difficulties in front of everybody, and they probably didn't know it.
What's to be done about the fundamentalists as we see a rise in conservative philosophy? To me, as a knee-jerk reaction to exactly what we just talked about, the acceptance among millennials of homosexual lifestyle and the realization that archaic dogma just kind of don't make sense. We see these mega churches coming together, preaching creationism. How do we get rid of those fools?
Well, I don't propose we get rid of them in any physical sense.
Well, nor do I.
But they certainly are. They do stand in the way of progress, and they do have a voice, and they are making their voice heard. Just think of the progress we've had since Voltaire and other times where you could write a book and you'd have 4, 5, 6 readers. I don't know how many. Of course, I'm just throwing a figure out.
Right.
Now for instance, my book "Why I Became an Atheist" is now in its 2nd edition, and that just never happened to an atheist book before. I mean, I remember talking to one atheist professor, and he said, so what they do is they start out with a hardcover copy. I don't know, they make their choices of who gets the hardcover copies and who doesn't.
That's the cool thing to have, right?
I never got one, and they didn't give me a hardcover copy. Okay, so I kept wondering why, and I don't know. But anyway, he had a hardcover, and what happens is if you sell them out, if they sell out of those first few books that you printed, then they make it into a paperback copy, and his never even made it into a paperback copy. But so mine in the 2nd edition. I mean, we're reaching more people. That's all that's happening. We're just continually reaching more and more people since the Enlightenment days, and we just have to keep continuing to do that. And I don't know, other than that, it strengthened the separation of church and state. I think it's a pretty good thing to have priests put in a bad light, not a good light, like they used to in the 50s and the 60s. All that kind of stuff helps.
You mentioned that you argue online and deconstruct Christians on that platform. Have you ever had a formal debate?
Oh, yeah.
Yes. I've debated several people, yeah.
Dinesh D'Souza comes to mind. I watched that.
All right.
Oh, yeah? Did you? Yeah, I've debated a few. I'm thinking about putting a book out of my debates, and yeah.
And would you be interested in more of that in the future? Or no, you don't?
Yeah, sure. The one thing I like about debates is the opening statement. And, I probably should get a little bit better at it. I've done okay on some of them and not so good on others. I like, say a 20-minute opening on, say, did Jesus rise from the dead, which I debated recently against Abdu Murray, which is a William Lane Craig clone of sorts. Nice guy, really like him. But I was able to put together 20 minutes of a talk, trying to summarize everything that I thought would be important to consider regarding whether Jesus rose from the dead into 20 minutes. And so what I like about those debates is like one, existence of God, or the problem of suffering, or one I had with Wallace Marshall on it was loosely titled Atheism versus Christianity, is I was able to put together 20 minutes of everything I knew about the topic that I thought was important. And I like that. That was pretty cool. So I'm going to put those out, although they're still available out there somewhere.
I ask, of course, because we sponsor our own debate series called Buzz Belief. The next one coming up October 21st. Robert Price and Bart Ehrman going to debate the historicity of Jesus at Turner Hall, historic Turner Hall, downtown Milwaukee. Get your tickets at mythicistmilwaukee.com. And we're going to need more debaters as that series continues. So I'm always fishing.
Cool.
For a guy like yourself with a name that just smacks of erudite scholarliness. Loftus. It sounds like mock Latin for high and mighty. John Loftus.
Oh, yeah. Well, it's an Irish name, and I think it originates with the term loft house.
Okay.
So that's where some of my ancestors probably lived up
in the straw. Yeah.
Yeah. If you're a Notre Dame fan, if you're a Notre Dame fan, that is the name of the practice field, the Loftus Center.
Yeah, and over in, I think in Scotland or UK somewhere, they have Loftus Stadium, so that's pretty cool. Right. Soccer stadium.
Where do you stand on the Christ myth theory?
Yeah, well, here's the thing. I'm interested. I'm always interested in knowledge. I've gone from one side of the spectrum to almost embracing the other side, but not quite. But here's what I say is this. What I do know, and what I think everybody in the debate, interested in, all the atheists and agnostics interested in that debate, would probably agree upon, is that the Jesus we find in the Gospels never existed.
Yeah.
There was never a man who was born of a virgin. There was never a man who did all those healings, healing a blind man. There was never a man who spoke the words of God. There was never a man who was crucified for our sins. Never a man who resurrected from the dead and was, went to heaven and is coming back. That person does not exist. Never did, never will.
Right. So the atheist Jesus is really just not worth arguing. Is that the point? If he was not the man they say he's going to be?
Well, no, I don't know. Everything's worth debating. I mean, every piece of knowledge is worth looking for. No, I wouldn't say that at all. It's just, and I'm learning. It's good. I don't always feel myself qualified to debate or talk about things that I haven't studied in depth, and I haven't really done that about that issue because my focus is that I'm trying to convince Christians, if I can, that the Jesus in the Gospels never existed, and that's my focus. Yeah.
What about, I heard a rumor that William Lane Craig doesn't want to debate you because you were one of his students. Is that true?
Yeah.
And does that piss you off at all?
It does, in a way. It has. I did talk with him, and he, went face to face, and he says, "John, that wouldn't be appropriate." But I was in the line, and he was signing books. It was after his debate with Sam Harris, and so that's all I got out of him. But he doesn't want to debate me because I'm a former student, is what he's been saying, and that doesn't make any sense to me. That's a. Yeah, let's just say he doesn't debate me. Well, okay, fine. I'm just going to keep doing what I'm doing anyway. So, and I'm also going to keep calling attention to the fact that he won't debate me too.
I think I can read the flavor of that text. I can interpret that in the right way.
Now, how old a guy is he now?
Oh, he's 70.
Yeah.
He just turned 70 not too long ago.
That's not too bad.
But, it came up as an interesting fact when Dawkins wouldn't debate him. People were calling attention to the fact he didn't want to debate me. as if, because he was complaining that Dawkins, didn't want to debate him. It was interesting to see people call that to his attention. So.
Do you think that one of the reasons why religion, even maybe in a watered down form, continues to hang around is like this comfort, this thought that I don't have to die? Because I always was curious about like the groups of 75 or 80-year-old atheists sitting around, and I'm like, man, aren't they scared and wigging out? But they probably found that at a much earlier age. Do you feel that has anything to play into it?
Well, yeah, I think faith it comes around to give us hope. I mean, that's why people have it, I think. And of course, if community is one of the reasons you want to maintain a faith so that you can maintain your status in the community, then the reason why is because it gives you hope. And the afterlife is where the community all gets together and parties or wherever heaven is, and where they can claim their right. I wonder how many people really believe there's a heaven so that they can look down on the atheists and doubters and Baptists and say, "See, told you so."
Or Baptists.
Yeah, right. It depends on if they're not Baptist, of course.
As Hitchens would say, like, look over the edge and observe and delight in the tortures of the damned.
With that too, I seem to think that they just want to be right, but see, I try to tell them, you know what, you're never going to know you're right, because when you die, you'll never know you're right, and I'll never know that with 100% certainty, I'll never know that I was right, because when I die, you have to wake up for about 5 seconds, look around, see nothing, say, hey, damn, I was right.
Right. Now, some of the price of that hope, the marginalization of certain groups. I mean, you'd say homosexuals, which is getting better, but if you look at some pieces in the Islamic world, you have death for apostasy, stoning of adulterers. That seems like a high price to pay for hope.
Yeah, it does, but they don't realize it because they are always in the in crowd. I mean, they're always in, and the outsiders. That's the whole thing about this. They have a salvation only of the elect, and they are among the elect, and damn the world, damn everybody else. I mean, you can have that kind of faith if you never step outside your world, if you live in a cave, but once you get out into the world, you really have that cognitive dissonance you have to reduce. I don't see how they can do it, but they do.
A quick look at Wikipedia describes you as an atheist activist. Do you see yourself as an activist, or are you just kind of an author and that's the way it goes? Or where do you fit in that? Where do you fit in the movement, my friend?
I don't know what an activist, I know what an activist is. That's someone who will get up to the town council meeting and say a prayer as an atheist. That's an activist. Someone who, refuses to sit in the back of a bus, I suppose. That's an activist. I don't do anything necessarily. I focus all my time on writing books, I suppose. I don't think that describes me. But then I didn't write that page either.
Well, that answers the question. Do you show up at conventions? Do you do speeches or?
Yeah. I mean, and I supported Bernie Sanders. It looks like he's going to lose. I was a delegate from the state of Indiana, and the recent Democratic convention in Indiana just basically ignored the Sanders crowd. It was politics as usual. There were 14 people on a committee of resolutions. A resolutions committee, and several resolutions were put forward that would help support Bernie Sanders' platform. And only one of those committee members was an independent. The rest were all Hillary supporters. It was just politics as usual. But yeah, so I'm an activist politically. Sure, yeah. I mean, I participated in a march rally. It was yesterday for Black Lives Matter down in Fort Wayne. It was a massive thing for us. There were only handfuls of white guys there, but I told people about it afterward, and they said, "Well, what did you expect there?" I said, "There weren't that many white people there." "Well, what did you expect?" I said, "Well, there should have been more." So yeah, I'm an activist, but politically more than other things.
And we want to ask everybody to go to the webpage and support mythicistmilwaukee.com by becoming a member. There's a couple of different options for doing that, but we need your help to keep on bringing you the great kind of content that we've been bringing you now for a couple of years. And that includes, of course, our Myth of the Day. He's our buddy Antonio here to regale us with another version of Myth of the Day. Take it away, Antonio.
Thank you very much. And again, thanks, John, for being here on today's show. In many mythological folklore and religious traditions, hell is a place of eternal torment in the afterlife. In modern times, it is widely accepted that the mythical realm known as hell is a painful place of fire and brimstone. We see this in Greek mythology with Tartarus, is the deep abyss in ancient Greek mythology that is used as a dungeon of torment and suffering for the wicked. According to Plato and Gorgias, 400 BC, souls were judged after death and where the wicked received punishment. Tartarus is also known as a fiery prison under earth. But despite these common depictions, some other traditions portray hell as a cold and icy realm. We put together this short list of frozen mythical realms. In Christianity, Dante's Inferno, Ninth Circle of Hell, St. Patrick's Purgatory. In Islam, Zamharir is the hell of extreme coldness. Buddhism, the 8 cold Narakas. In Zoroastrianism, Hemestagen. Norse mythology, hell, yes, only one letter off, or Niflheim. And that is our myth of the day.
Thank you, Antonio. Myth of the day brought to you by the atheist community of Milwaukee. And the show also receives support from Kenosha Racine atheists and free thinkers. I received a note to mention that if you can't make the debate in October, you can stream that online for $10 small dollars if you can't be there in person, which, of course, you want to be if you can. Historic Turner Hall. Very excited for that.
Right. John, I was going to ask what you thought specifically on politics. Are those on the left, which sometimes gets called the regressive left, who kind of seek to not deny the power of religiously held beliefs. And some of it, supposedly after Orlando and some others, you get that that's not Islam or this doesn't have anything to do with Islam. What do you make of this denial of religious influence?
Yeah, I haven't responded to much of those problems because I've been focused on writing my books, but I do have an opinion, and I'm going to tell you it.
Yeah, all right.
It's the same thing with regard to Christianity. I mean, I find this all the time. There's going to be people who say that wasn't true Christianity. I mean, I'll talk about the Inquisition. That wasn't true Christianity. Mm-hmm. The Crusades. That wasn't true Christianity. And they'll talk about other things. People who are homophobic. Those aren't true Christians. And who's doing all this? Who's telling us all this? Well, there would be Christians. Mm-hmm. Now, I don't really want to see here from my perspective, and I'm talking about the regressive left by analogy, but I don't really want to get into those debates. I don't really want to say, well, no, I'm going to tell you what a true Christian is, because that's not my debate. I'm not in that house. I'm outside the house of faith, you see. So they're going to do that, and they're going to do it a lot, and that's what the Muslims are doing. They're saying that's not a true Muslim. And they kill over that, some of them. Right. So I'm not going to step in that debate and say, okay, well, let me tell you who a true Muslim is. That's just as bizarre to me as saying, well, I'm going to tell you what a true Christian is.
Sure.
So when a Mormon says they're a Christian, I say, okay, fine. I don't have a debate with you. Jehovah's Witness says I'm a Christian. Okay, fine. Snake handler. Okay, fine. I'm not going to make a judgment and say, here's true Christianity. I'm not going to do it with Christians. I'm not going to do it with Muslims. That's but what I will say is that, okay, fine. This may not be your version of Islam. But ISIS is just barbaric. ISIS, let's agree that it needs to be stopped, or certainly changed. And I don't know. I guess the only way you can change them is kill them. So I don't really care whether it's said that they're true Muslims or not. They're still a group of people that needs to be opposed, and they do claim to be Muslim, and so here's a various branch of Muslim. I mean, why couldn't you say that? And I do. So
right. No, it just seems like they're some people you can come under fire for just saying that. To suggest that it's religiously influenced at all, and now you're a racist or an Islamophobe. I know Sam Harris is coming under a lot of attack for that, and others, even including secular Arab activists. They're calling them traitors, if you will.
Yeah, I know that. I know it's just if people say that they're Christians, I'll take them at their word. I mean, I'm just not there to make a judgment call. I don't live in that house. And if people kill in the name of Allah, And now we can talk about their motivations. We can talk about why they are where they are and why they want to kill people. And it may or may not be due to what the Quran teaches. I'm not going to get into that debate whether the Quran teaches that or not either, you see. But they are saying X. And I'm just going to say, okay, that's a version of Islam that we should all be distancing ourselves from, just as I would say that of any type of Christianity that does harm. Because there are Christianities that don't do as much harm, and that would be the liberal of Bishop John Shelby Spong, for one example. I can embrace a lot of what he teaches. He's kind of a secular Christian, if you will.
Right. It seems like the more and more religion comes into contact with secularism, the better it gets.
Exactly, and science and reason as well. Right, all of it. Mm-hmm. Right.
Now, you a big science guy, or you don't know a lot about it?
What do you...
I mean, you got any background there?
No,
a fan?
I know nothing about science.
Right. I grew up in Indiana, where we say irregardless.
I'm just joking. I mean, what I do know about science is that science works. It has produced the goods. The method is important, and it can be stretched across lines of history and the philosophy of religion, into what we will accept and what we won't, into the level of discourse. No, I'm not a scientist, but I just got done editing a book called Christianity in the Light of Science, so I guess I know enough to get some people together who do. And I like the first chapter. Guy Harrison wrote a chapter on how to think like a Christian. Thinking like a Christian is what I advocate. I mean, I've always advocated that, and you don't have to be a scientist to argue that.
That's a good point. What do you think of philosophy? Like Voltaire himself. I mean, is that the philosophical debating philosophy better than debating religion?
Well, sometimes it's the same thing. It depends on what you're talking about. But I mean, there's a philosophy of science, philosophy of history, philosophy of language. I mean, be quite a bit removed from religion, itself. And those debates are important. And I don't argue against philosophy itself. Philosophy is one of those umbrella disciplines that draws from all the other disciplines and kind of meshes it together. Any philosophy that's not scientifically informed, however, I don't have much use for. Right? And that's mostly in the philosophy of religion. Yeah.
So evidence-based, that you demand evidence.
Yes.
He's former Christian and atheist author John Loftus joining us on the Mythicist Milwaukee show. And while I got the both of you here, I'm going to ask, what is to be done about Indiana? I know the northern states have had a referendum to just kick them out and make them an actual part of the South. They've considered moving the entire state.
I just want to put him back on Central Time.
There's that. There's the whole ridiculous politics. The I think it's the seat of creationism. I think basically, Kentucky gets a bad rap, but I think actually it all comes from Indiana.
Well, I mean, there's other states that, are having problems as well. But I'm part of a Democratic Party here is trying to oust Mike Pence. And we have bumper stickers that say fire Pence, so we do. They're all over the place. I see them lots. And we're doing what we can. But, yeah, there's a bunch of backward people. And, you have to realize that Indiana in the 20s and stretching into the 30s was the center of the national KKK movement.
Really?
See, what I'm talking about?
Wow.
Yeah. You couldn't get elected in Indiana without bowing down to some of the leaders. So it was pretty bad, a pretty bad place to live. And yet we also had people during the slave years that transported runaway slaves through the state. And I visited a town where there was Fremont, Indiana, where
you're talking my language here. Go on.
Yeah, that had a bunch of houses in that small little town, and it was interesting stories that go with that. So even though we have that sordid past, there's still these bright lights, and we'll just have to see how it works out.
I tease, of course, I tease. John, thank you for joining us. Find his books at all the usual outlets.
Yes, thank you.
You got it. Anything else for Mr. Loftus, Brian?
He's great guy. I think you've got a lot of good stuff to say. I'm interested in reading more of your books and listening to the full think of your last sermon, because I can really feel that your strife up there as you're kind of in cloak preaching to the person that maybe is you in the audience. That's awesome. I mean, exactly. You can feel it in your voice.
Well, good. And if people want to look that up, I think it's I titled it "The Last Sermon of John W. Loftus" or something like that.
When was that? What year is that? 1990 or like 94?
That would have been 98, I think. I'd have to look at what I wrote because I had researched to make sure. I think it's 98. 1998 was my last sermon.
Okay.
Go get that fridge fixed, man.
And I've been to Fremont, Indiana, and it's one stoplight.
Fremont?
Fremont.
Fremont.
The corner pocket. You can stop in and have a bar.
Oh, hell yeah.
Nice. You're a couple of hicks. Thanks, buddy. All right.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks. Take it easy.
Okay, bye.
John Loftus, man. Good dude. We're joined by producer Sean Frasek now. We wanted to talk about the divisiveness in general that's been caused by the so-called social justice warriors and the feminist faction, the atheist plus.
What we call the regressive left, those that are so ideological that you no longer can see reason.
Right. And it's begun to affect colleagues of ours. It's begun to affect the entire movement. And I guess all we can say is that we know that justice will prevail and an investigation is underway, and we have every reason to believe that the truth will come out and everything will be all right in the end.
I mean, due process. I believe
process,
everyone is innocent or
everybody's
guilty.
innocent.
I will remain I'll keep my skeptical attitude like I do to everything until the evidence vets out.
Indeed. And as far as our buddy Justin Bass is concerned, he weighed in on the debate coming, and we wanted to plug the upcoming debate series main event with Robert Price and Bart Ehrman at Turner Hall in October.
There won't be an octagon, though.
It won't be in an octagon, but it's the big one, and people are looking forward to it. And our buddy Justin Bass, who I love and had a great time talking to him, seemed to indicate that there were only two proponents of the mythicist theory, which I find after how many shows, Sean? 150. I mean, really. 2 years or more of shows, largely mythicists. I beg to differ. I think there's a lot of mythicists out there, and I think that Dr. Robert Price, and none of us are going to be here forever, but there'll be plenty of people to take up the mantle when those guys are finished. So I hate to see him taking any kind of joy in anyone's personal travails at this point. And as we stated, we feel confident that
it comes on the back end of the Carrier incident with SSA and Skepticon and Free Thought blogs, and he pointed out that essentially Richard Carrier has fallen, which I don't agree with. Richard Carrier put out a statement stating that he's taking the legal course of action. That's what you do in these types of circumstances, and I personally, knowing him personally, I feel that he will overcome this. And the fact that Bass points out that Carrier and Price are the only two proponents, he's completely incorrect. You have Raphael Laddister, you have
Ken Humphreys,
you have so many people out there that are vying for this position, and it is gaining popularity. Our hope is that it will become the consensus.
I think it scares him that he's probably not right. And so he's nervous, and he wants his position to be true. And
I just think it was
I get that
bad form.
Maybe.
Yeah, I think personally, I think it's bad form. You don't point. I mean, whether or not you agree with what's going on, I don't think that's the time to comment on it. And then also say it's the downfall of mythicism just because you have an allegation out there on somebody that hasn't even been proven to be, factual.
Well, he's looking forward to a debate, and he's
looking forward to the debate.
He's hoping cool. Bart Ehrman will prevail, and so I think we should run with that ball. And the best we can hope for is a really fine debate on October 21st at Turner Hall. And the question I tease, but the question, of course, is not going to be solved. It'll always be in doubt, and there will always be mythicists to take up the flag after this debate. So
you want to win on the merits of your game, right? If you're prepared for the big game, you want to win. You don't want them to, like, the bus didn't show up because there was a tornado and they had to forfeit. You want to play the game.
Right. So the point is, tune in on October 21st and see what happens, because he's there are a lot of people who are in his corner, and that's the point of the whole debate, is to get that discussion going and invite people who are hoping that the historical Jesus position actually prevails in that debate. So
and the scholarship here is also inspiring younger scholars to get involved in this conversation and ask this question. Raphael Laddister points that out a lot. The papers that he's seeing that are coming forward just on his end, people are Jesus, if whether or not he existed. I mean, we're seeing that just in comparative religious papers. This is it's starting to become more of a actual popular discussion versus a fringe take on it. So.
Right.
Yeah, but anyway, I know people were a little bit salty about what he said, and I get it, but I took it with a little a smile because I know that in his heart of hearts, he just wants his side to be true. You know what I mean? And so he's.
I don't think he means it in a mean way.
Maybe it was poor gamesmanship, and I don't think I need to take it any further than that on our side. I'm looking forward to hearing the Dr. Robert Price dismantle Bart Ehrman's weak case for a historical Jesus.
Still, I wouldn't want to. Bart Ehrman would throttle me. But so that's why I think we're literally the two best going at each other. This is Notre Dame and USC at their height in 1988.
Thanks for joining us, everybody, on the Mythicist Milwaukee Show, the podcast that puts God last. Remember to get your tickets. The early bird pricing ends this month, and next week there will be no podcast because it is July 4th. So join us in 2 weeks for the Scathing Atheist.
Nice.
Thanks for joining us, everybody. Bye. The Mythicist Milwaukee Show is brought to you by Mythicist Milwaukee. Producer Sean Frasek. Associate producer Melanie Lawson. Engineer Jason Lawson. Mythmeister Antonio Blandone. Researcher Kristen Whitaker-Hood. Closing theme written and performed by Shelley Siegel. On behalf of co-host Brian Edward and the entire team, I'm Rob Moore reminding you to keep it safe and to keep it secular.
Okay, got it.